The delivery room lights were blindingly bright. Veins stood out on the back of my hand as I clenched the bedsheet. Sweat plastering all my hair to my neck. The midwife's voice sounded as if it were coming through a layer of water. Push the heads out. The woman on the bed next to me was crying out her husband's name, while her mother-in-law was shoving ginseng slices into her mouth. No one is here with me. 3 hours ago. A taxi dropped me off at the hospital entrance. My water had broken, and it was running down my legs. The number IKN by heart on my phone had been a busy signal all along. In the end, I called my best friend, Shin Ching-he. She was on a business trip, and through the phone she screamed, Jiang Jinyue. Hang on. I'll find someone right away. Hang on. I pulled my lips into a smile, my nails digging into my palm. That absurd affair 5 years ago should have made me see today coming. At the time, I had just graduated and was working part-time as a waiter at the Lost Bar. I was delivering drinks to a VIP private room when I ran into a man. He was sunk into a dark red sofa, his white shirt unbuttoned down to his chest, the exposed collarbone sharp as a blade. His gaze was hazy, his whole body burning hot. The floor supervisor gave me a shove and said in a low voice, Mr. Lin's had too much to drink. Bring him a glass of ice. What? I handed over the ice water, and he caught my wrist, his searing palm pressed against my skin like a branding iron. Don't go. His voice was hoarse, reeking of alcohol. I couldn't break free. He was terrifyingly strong, his scorching breath brushing against the side of my neck. The private room door closed behind us. The lighting was seductive, the air thick and sticky, chaos searing hot, like a dream I could never wake from. When I came to, I was the only one left in the VIP suite. On the bedside table lay a check, the amount followed by a long string of zeros. Here was also a sticky note, with cold, stark printed lettering. Forget what happened last night. Below it was a signature, written in flamboyant, sweeping strokes. Lin Shubai. I tore up the check. I crumpled the note into a ball and tossed it into the trash can. When I walked out of Lost Path, dawn had just broken. The city was gray and hazy, as covered in a layer of dirty snow. 2 months later. 2 lines. The doctor looked at the ultrasound report and pushed up his glasses. Triplets. Very rare. I clutched the paper, my fingertips icy cold. Shin Ching-he sprang to his feet. Abort them. They have to be aborted. I shook my head. 3 little hearts were beating inside. I couldn't bear to part with them. I'll help you raise them after they're born, Shin Ching-he said with red-rimmed eyes, pounding his chest. I didn't let her raise her. 5 years. By day, a design drone at an advertising company. By night, taking on freelance gigs and drawing up layouts, formula diapers, kindergarten tuition, bent at the waist. There were times, exhausted as a dog, when even hatred rose in him. He hated Lin Shubai, the one who had left that check behind, and he hated himself even more for not have torn the check to pieces. Wah! The first cry tore through the air. I collapsed weakly. Congratulations. It's a little prince, the nurse said, cradling the tiny, red little bundle. Before anyone could catch a breath, the second baby's out. Push. The second cry rang out even louder. Another boy. Everything went dark before my eyes, and my ears rang. One more. Hold on. By the time the third cry rang out, I was completely exhausted. The nurse placed the 3 swaddled infants side by side on my chest. Heavy, weighing down the chest until it burned hot. Wrinkled little faces, like 3 red-skinned monkeys. The eldest had a tiny mole between his brows, Th. E2nd had a light brown birthmark on his right ankle. Lao San. Lao San was sucking on his finger. Asleep. At last. The tears fell, scalding hot. 5 years. The eldest is Lin Shu. The second Lin Shi. The third Lin Xing. I gave them their names. May they take root and grow like tree. Run free and unceasing like streams. And shine forever without dimming like the stars. Not like their father. Cold as a block of ice that would not melt. No matter how long it was held. Even less like me. Soft as a lump of dough for anyone to knead. Days were like a spinning top wound tight. To the last turn. Going to work. Picking up the child. Cooking. Putting them to sleep. Sleep was sliced into fragments. The woman in the mirror had fine lines creeping up at the corners of her eyes. The only thing that hadn't changed was her gaze. It had turned hard. A torrential rain. Friday. When the kindergarten called. I was being pressed by the client to revise the 8th draft of the proposal. Lingxing's mom. Lingxing has a fever 38.9 degrees. I grabbed my bag and rushed out into the rain. The subway was packed like a sardine can. My wet clothes clinging to my back sticky and cold. By the time they rushed to the kindergarten, Lin Xing's little face was flushed crimson with fever. Curled up in the teacher's arms. Whimpering softly. With one arm. He lifted his scorching hot youngest son. With the other. He took the hands of the eldest and second child. Their backpacks on their backs. The umbrella was blown inside out by the wind. Its ribs snapping, the rain came crashing down. Drenching them head to toe, hitching a ride by the roadside. Not a single cab was empty. Lin Shu suddenly pointed across the street. Mom. The cake shop. Today was his birthday. He had been talking about wanting to eat a strawberry cake since last week. I wiped the rainwater from my face. I'll buy one another day. Let's take your little brother home first. Lin Shu pouted and said softly. Every kid gets a cake on their birthday. My heart pricked as if by a needle. Wait here. Pushed the 3 children under the eaves of the convenience store by the street. Charged into the curtain of rain. The cake shop's glass door reflected the light. Didn't notice the slippery tiles beneath her feet. Bang. Her whole body pitched forward and fell. The cake flew out and splattered all over the floor. Her knee throbbed with searing pain. And her palm burned. The shop assistant ran out to help me up. Ma'am. Are you all right? Under the eaves of the convenience store. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in terror. Lin, she burst into tears with a wah. Rainwater mixed with tears as it streamed down. Whether it was the pain in her knee, or the string in her heart that had been stretched taut for 5 years finally snapping. She didn't know. Her phone vibrated inside the soaking wet bag. An unknown number. She answered. And a cold, hard Lu voice cut in. Ms. Jiang Jinyue. I'm Lin Shu Bai. We need to talk about what happened 5 years ago. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. 66th floor of Yunding Tower. No late arrivals. The call ended. The busy signal droned on. The rain grew heavier. It hit the ground like shards of ice. The next day. Yunding Tower. The ELE. Vader rose soundlessly. The mirrored wall reflected my face. Pale. With dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing the only presentable suit he owned. Bought 5 years ago. A little tight. 66th floor. The marble floor was so polished it reflected a person's image. Stepping on it made no sound. Beyond the towering curved floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lay sprawled beneath his feet. The air carried the cold scent of pine. The secretary pushed open the heavy walnut door. Mr. Lin. Miss Jiang has arrived. Behind the massive desk. The man lifted his head. Time had been especially kind to him. His features were still deep and sharp. Only the contours had grown a little harder. An expensive black shirt. Its cuffs rolled up to reveal a length of pale, cold wrist. The watch reflected a chilly gleam. He lifted his eyelids to look at me. His gaze was like a scalpel cold. Precise. Sit. I sat down. The sofa was soft as a trap. He leaned back in the chair. An unlit cigarette held between his fingertips. Jiang Jinyue. My name rolled off his lips and teeth, carrying the cool edge of scrutiny. On the phone yesterday. I mentioned 5 years ago. He paused. His gaze locked in. G onto me. Lost Path Bar. VIP booth. You were a waiter at the time. I was drugged. After that night. You disappeared. Until the day before yesterday. When my people found out you had given birth. He leaned forward. And an oppressive force hit her Hedon. My child. Those last 4 words crashed down in the empty office. A low hum echoed back. I met his gaze. Mr. Lin. My voice was steadier than I had expected. That night 5 years ago was a mistake. The child is mine. It has nothing to do with you. He let out a sneer. Nothing to do with M.E. The cigarette spun in a circle between his fingers. Paternity test. You doing it or not? If you don't want to. That's fine too. He pulled open the drawer and tossed out a stack of photos, scattered across the gleaming tabletop. Lin Shu was running in the kindergarten sports meet. Lin Shu was sprawled before the artboard at the youth palace, doodling. Lin Xing was clutching a baby bottle, soaking up the sun in the neighborhood garden. Each one was captured with crystal clear precision. Cold sweat instantly crept over my back. What do you want to do? He leaned back in his chair, relaxed and unhurried, like a beast toying with prey in the palm of its hand. 2 choices. First, do the paternity test. If the child is mine, the child will go to the Lin family. Second, refuse the paternity test. A cold curve tugged at the corner of his lip. The consequences. You can't afford to bear. My nails dug deep into my palm. The pain brought me back to my senses. Mr. Lin. I stood up and looked down at him. This is a society ruled by law. It's not because you're rich and powerful that you can just snatch someone else's child off. A flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes. A deeper, more amused expression followed. Is that so? He pressed the intercom. Secretary Zhang. Please ask Manager Li from the security department to come up. The call ended. He looked at me as if I were a rabbit that had strayed into a trap. I forgot to tell you. Lin Group is the largest donor to this kindergarten. The painting class at the Youth Palace is sponsored by someone with the surname Lin. As for the residential complex where you're renting, he gave a faint smile. Cold to the bone. Lin Group Real Estate Development. Blood surged instantly to my head. My vision went dark. The door was pushed open. A man in a black uniform walked in. His face expressionless, like a moving wall of iron. Mr. Lin. Lin Shubai didn't look at me. His voice was light and casual. Follow this Ms. Jiang. There are 3 little boys in her family. Ask them to come over as guests. Be a little more polite. Yes. The Iron Tower-like man turned toward me and made a gesture of invitation. Miss Jiang, please. Fear poured down from the top of her head like icy water. Every limb and bone in her body had gone numb with cold. She could not let him take the child away. Absolutely not. Wait. My voice was so sharp it was grating. Lin Shubai raised a hand, stopping the security manager. He looked at me as though he were looking at a small beast that had finally yielded. Changed your mind. I clenched my teeth so hard I could taste blood. Do the test. A faint trace of satisfaction flickered in his eyes. Good. Paternity Testing Center. Cold white walls. The pungent sting of disinfectant in the air. A doctor in a white lab coat took saliva samples from me and the children. When the cotton swab reached into his mouth, Lin Xing shrank back in fear. Mommy, tears welled up in his wide eyes. I held him tightly in my arms. Don't be afraid. Xing Xing. Xing Xing isn't afraid. Lin Shu wore a stern little face, like an angry lion cub, glaring fiercely at Lin Shu outside the glass window. Lin Shi, on the other hand, looked around curiously and asked in a low voice, Mommy, why does this uncle look a little like us? Outside the glass window, Lin Shubai stood leaning against the wall. An expensive suit was out of place here. Through the glass, he fixed his dark, heavy gaze on the three children. Too complex to read. 3 days of waiting for the result. As if being fried in a pan of hot oil. The phone line at home had been unplugged. The cell signal came and went. Outside the window. Downstairs, that black sedan sat parked there 24 hours a day. Someone sent by Lin Shubai. Like a silent warning. The afternoon of the 3rd day, the phone rang. There was no emotion to be heard in Lin Shubai's voice. The results are out. Bring the child and come to Yunding. 66th floor again. On the massive desk lay a thin manila envelope. At the sealed flap, the bright red seal of the appraisal center was stamped. Like a hideous wound, Lin Shubai sat behind the table, his fingertips tapping against heat tabletop. Tap, tap, tap. Each strike landed on the heart. See for yourself. He lifted his chin slightly and pointed at the file folder. His palms were drenched in sweat. I walked over and picked up the file folder. It was very light, weighing well over 1,000 jin. The UND of the seal being torn open was especially piercing in the dead silence of the office. He pulled out the report. His gaze went straight to the last page. According to the DNA analysis results, Lin Shubai is confirmed as the biological father of Lin Shu. Lin Shi and Lin Xing, confirmed. Biological father, in black and white, like a red-hot branding iron, searing into his eyes. His vision darkened in waves. He had to brace himself against the edge of the table to stay on his feet. Now, what do you have to say? Lin Shubai's voice came from above. It was cold, carrying the certainty of one who held everything in his grasp. I slowly raised my head and looked at him, looking at this face, so much like my children's. 5 years of grievance, anger, unwillingness, fear. Every emotion exploded at once. Lin Shubai. My voice trembled beyond recognition. These 5 years. Where have you been? Where were you when I was squeezed onto the subway with a huge pregnant belly, going for prenatal checkups? Where were you when I was alone in the delivery room, giving birth to 3 children and nearly dying on the operating table? Where were you when the children had fevers, and I was holding them in the pouring rain, unable to get a taxi? Now, what right do you have? What right do you have to come and take my child with nothing but this piece of paper? Tears burst forth in a torrent. They struck the polished tabletop, spreading into dark, watery stains. A faint crack split across Lin Shubai's certainty. He looked at me, his brows knitting slightly. Back then, you threw down a check and walked away. I cut him off, my voice hoarse, like you were paying off a prostitute. I didn't take the check. The child was born because I risked my life to bring him into this world. I raised him 1 bite of milk and 1 bite of food at a time. What else did you do besides contribute a single sperm? Biological father. I snatched up the report and slammed it down hard in front of him. You think you deserve it? The office fell dead silent. Only my ragged breathing remained. Lin Shubai's expression was as ugly as it could possibly be. He stared at the scattered report pages, his thin lips pressed into a cold, straight line. What do you want? He spoke. His voice cold and heavy. Money. The house. Or Mrs. Lin's position. Every single word was like a needle dipped in poison, piercing straight into my heart. I looked at him and suddenly laughed. He laughed until tears came to his eyes. Lin Shubai, you think everyone is dying for your filthy money? Take your money and get out of my and my child's life. The child is mine. Always has been. Always will be. I turned and walked away. My back was held perfectly straight. My hand had just touched the cold brass door handle. Behind me came his voice, strained with suppressed anger. Stop. I pulled the door open. Jiang Jinyue. He sprang to his feet so abruptly that the legs of his chair scraped across the floor with a grating screech. You may leave. The child must stay. Otherwise. The door was pushed open. The security manager, tower-like and imposing, stood blocking the doorway like a wall, expressionless. His gaze was cold. The retreat route had been cut off. Despair coiled around his heart like a cold vine. Mommy. A child's sobbing cry came from the rest area outside the door. 3 tiny figures broke free from the secretary's restraint and charged over like cannonballs. Lin Shu, like an enraged little lion, rammed headfirst into the security manager's leg. Bad guy. Don't you dare bully my mom. The security manager didn't budge an inch. Lin Shi over and wrapped her arms around my legs, her little face deathly pale, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. Lin Xing was terrified, standing rooted to the spot and bawling her eyes out. Mommy, go home. Xing wants to go home. My heart was torn to pieces. He picked up Lin Xing, who was shaking with sobs, and pulled Lin Shi into his arms. Lin Shu spread out his short little arms, like a hen protecting her chicks, and stood in front of me, glaring fiercely at Lin Shubai. Bad guy. Stay away from my mom. Lin Shubai's gaze fell upon Lin Shu's stubborn little face. The little mole between her brows was exactly the same as his. The ice on his face seemed to split open with a faint crack. Lin Shu. He uttered the name, his voice somewhat stiff. Lin Shu was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Don't you dare call me by my name. Bad guy. Lin Shubai wasn't angry. His gaze swept over Lin Shi, who was crying so hard she was hiccuping, and came to rest on Lin Xing, sobbing in my arms. The little one's face was streaked with tears. His long lashes were wet and clumped together, and his small nose kept twitching. Lin Shubai's Adam's apple moved almost imperceptibly. He raised a hand. The security manager silently stepped back. Take the children down to the dessert area, Lin Shubai said to the secretary. The secreta hurried forward, forcing a smile. Kids, how about coming with Auntie to have some ice cream? There's strawberry flavor. 2. Lin Shu clung tightly to my leg warily. I'm not going. You're the bad guy's accomplice. Lin Shi raised her head timidly to look at me. Mom. Lin Xing buried her face in the crook of my neck, her little body still trembling. I drew a deep breath, forcing down the emotions surging inside me. He crouched down and looked the 3 children in the eye. Shu Shu Sisi. Xing Xing. Least. N to mommy. Mommy, and this I paused, then forced out the 2 words with difficulty. Uncle. Need to talk about something. You all go with Auntie to get ice cream. Mom promises. I'll come find you soon. Lin Shu looked at me, then at Lin Shubai. His little brows furrowed so tightly they nearly pinched together. If he bullies you again, just shout. I'll protect you. My nose stung, and I nodded hard. Okay. I watched as the secretary led the children into the elevator, turning back every few steps. The softness on my face vanished in an instant, turned around and closed the door, cut off from the outside world. In the office, Only he and I remained. The air was still. Lin Shubai. I looked at him. Word by word. The children are my life. If you dare lay a hand on them, I'll fight you to the death. The barefoot fear not those who wear shoes. If you don't believe it, try me. He leaned against the edge of the table and lit a cigarette. The smoke blurred the hard, cold lines of his profile. Jiang Jinyue. For 5 years. I was unaware. It was my oversight. But blood ties cannot be changed. They are my sons. Lin Shubai's sons. The bloodline of the Lin family cannot be left to wander outside. Follow you. Live in a rented flat. Take the subway. Go to an ordinary kindergarten. He tapped the ash from his cigarette, his tone carrying a condescending judgment. What can you give them? I smiled. What I give them? You could never give. I gave them a hot meal, an embrace, and a bedtime story. I gave them the courage to stand in front of them when they were bullied, the vigil of sleepless nights when they were sick. I gave them love without reservation. Lin Shubai. Ask yourself, besides cold hard cash and the so-called Lin family bloodline, what else can you give them? The fingers that held the cigarette froze amid the swirling smoke. His gaze was impossible to make out. Silence, like a frigid tide. It drowned the entire space. For a long while, he pressed out the cigarette, but 3 months. He lifted his eyes, his gaze sharp as a hawk's. The child will stay by your side. I'll give them 3 months to adjust. During this time, I will intervene in their lives. 3 months later, they must return to the Lin family, receive the best education and have everything they should have. As compensation, he pulled open a drawer, took a document, and pushed it to me. A 300 square meter high-rise flat in the city center. 50 million in cash. Or he paused. One of Lin Group's shares. The cold numbers and clauses on the document gleamed with an allure that was as enticing as it was ironic. I didn't even touch that document. Lin Shubai. A child is not a commodity. 3 months is fine. But on one condition. Meeting his scrutinizing gaze, I said it resolutely. For these 3 months, you must take care of them yourself. Like a real father. Don't rely on others to do it for you. Don't try to get rid of them. With money, I want you to personally experience what it feels like to raise 3 children. If you can't do it, or if they're unwilling to go with you, then please get out of our lives forever. A flicker of astonishment flashed through his eyes. It was quickly replaced by cold scrutiny. Jiang Jinyue, are you trying to bargain with me? Yes. I did not back down. Care to make a bet? He stared at me, as if assessing the value of an object. A long while passed. 2 words slipped from his thin lips. Deal. The next day was Saturday, when the doorbell rang. I had just scraped the burnt eggs into the trash. She ran barefoot to open the door. Uncle. He tilted his little head up and looked at the man in a suit standing outside the door. Lin Shubai stood at the doorway. He was carrying a huge toy gift box printed with a luxury brand logo. It looked utterly out of place against the model corridor behind him. He frowned slightly, taking in the little home of less than 60 square meters, crammed full of toys and picture books. You're letting them live in a place like this. It can't compare to Mr. Lin's mansion, I said flatly, still wearing my apron. But this is called home. Lin Shubai didn't reply. He placed the gift box of toys on the only sofa that was still somewhat tidy. Shu shu cc. Xing xing. These are for you. Lin Shu lifted his head from the pie. Liu of blocks. Glanced over, snorted, and continued building his space fortress. Lin Shu was a little curious and leaned over to touch the shiny wrapping. Lin Xing hugged his baby bottle and asked in a soft, Childlike voice. Uncle. Do you have strawberry cake? Lin Shubai. I held back a laugh. Mr. Lin. On the first day. The task is a heavy one. Take them to the amusement park. You're in charge for the whole trip. No assistants or bodyguards. No private bookings. Like an ordinary dad. Lin Shubai's brows knitted into a deep frown. Obviously. The ordinary dad lay beyond the scope of his comprehension. The amusement park on the weekend. A sea of people. Shrieks, music. And the sweet, cloying scent of popcorn mingled together. Lin Shubai, dressed in a bespoke suit, stood among a crowd wearing cartoon t-shirts and sneakers. A crane chickens. He looked like a model who had wandered onto the wrong set. The three children were like little wild ponies broken loose from their reins. I want to ride the roller coaster. Lin Shu pointed at the winding steel dragon. Lin Shubai looked at the track, which plunged almost vertically downward. And his expression changed slightly. That one is dangerous. Uncle. Are you scared? Lin Shu tilted his little face up, full of defiance. Lin Shubai's jaw tightened. I'm not afraid. 5 minutes later, the roller coaster started. A high-speed plunge. A sharp turn. Upside down. Lin Shu shrieked in excitement. She kept her eyes tightly shut. Lin Shubai. His face was deathly pale. White as paper. On the way down, his steps were unsteady, and he clutched the railing beside him, his stomach churning violently. Lin Shu looked at him in contempt. Uncle. You're so cowardly. Lin Shubai. I want ice cream. Lin, she said, pointing at the pink cotton candy cart. That's unhealthy. Lin Shubai tried to regain his dignity. Mom lets me eat them. Lin, she pouted. Lin Shubai looked at those wet, glistening eyes that were exactly like Lin Shi's. You're only allowed to eat one. 3 minutes later, Lin Shu was holding a pink cotton candy nearly as big as his face. Lin Xing was holding a chocolate cone, his mouth and hands smeared all over with brown. A sticky streak of chocolate had been rubbed onto the expensive suit pants Lin Shubai was wearing. The vein at his temple was throbbing. You. Nkli. I want to play bumper cars. Lin Shu spotted a new target. Uncle. I want that little dinosaur balloon. Lin, she pointed into the distance. Uncle, carry me. Xing can't walk anymore. Lin Xing held out his chocolate-stained hands. Lin Shubai was surrounded by the 3 children, like an eagle besieged by a flock of chirping sparrows. In utter disarray, unable to attend to one thing without neglecting another. I folded my arms and watched from afar, watching the man who dominated the business world and whose word was law, being bossed around in circles by 3 little brats. Fine beads of sweat seeped out at his temples. His expensive tie was askew. A lock of hair had been tousled by Lin Xing's hand. A sorry sight. And somehow a little funny. Even o'clock in the evening. The amusement park had closed for the day. The 3 children had run out of battery. Lin Shi had fallen asleep on Lin Shubai's back, drooling all over his shoulder. Lin Shu was barely holding on, his eyelids drooping with drowsiness. Lin Xing was cradled in my arms, his little head nodding little by little. Lin Shubai's car was parked in the VIP lane. The driver opened the car door. He carefully shifted Lin Shi off his back, his movements awkward and stiff, afraid of waking the child. Got into the car, the spacious back seat of the top-tier Lushu. Car now felt cramped. The child's seat was brand new, installed in haste only this afternoon. Lin Shubai looked at the 3 little heads sleeping crookedly in the children's seats. His expression was complicated. Weariness, helplessness, and a trace of something softness he had never felt before. He began, his voice a little hoarse. Are they always this energetic? This is nothing yet. I looked at the neon flashing past outside the window. Lin Shu sleepwalks in the middle of the night. Lin Shi is so picky she only eats green vegetables. And Lin Xing wakes up on the dot at 4 every morning and has to be held and soothed for an hour. Lin Shu Bai fell si. Lent. The car drove into the city proper. Mr. Lin, I reminded him. We agreed you're in charge of getting them to sleep tonight. His body visibly stiffened. Back to that tiny rented room. He settled the sleeping Lin Shi and Lin Xing onto the little bed. Lin Shu forced himself through washing up. Climbed into bed. And even held onto his dinosaur model. Uncle. Tell us a story. Lin Shu Bai sat beside the little children's bed like a man being marched to the scaffold. He held the D.O.G.A.-read copy of the Dinosaur Encyclopedia and read in a stiff, wooden voice, the Tyrannosaurus rex, also known as the T-Rex, is one of the known carnivorous dinosaurs. Body length. Lin Shu cut in unhappily. Uncle. That's not how you say it. You have to put some feeling into it. You have to imitate a T-Rex's voice. Oh woo. Lin Shu Bai. He took a deep breath and, with great difficulty, squeezed out a low, short sound from his throat. Ayo. Lin Shu curled his lip in disdain. Not at all. Mom does it so much better. In the dim lamplight, the tips of Lin Shu Bai's ears seemed a little red. He closed the book. Go to sleep. His tone returned to its usual commanding edge. Lin Shu shrank deeper under the covers, leaving only a pair of eyes exposed, and muttered softly, Bad uncle. Lin Shu Bai switched off the bedside lamp and walked into the living room. I handed him a glass of water. He took it and drank it down in one gulp. The expensive suit was wrinkled, with a faint smear of Lin Shu's saliva still on the shoulder. How does it feel, Mr. Lin? I leaned against the doorframe. He loosened his tie and reclined on the shabby fabric sofa. His eyes closed. Between his brows lingered a deep weariness, more exhausting than acquiring 3 listed companies. His voice rasped, drained to the point of exhaustion. I gave a soft laugh. This is only the first day. He opened his eyes, and his dark, unfathomable gaze settled on my face. Jiang Jinyue, how have you gotten through these 5 years? His voice was very soft, with a trace of barely perceptible confusion. I let my smile fade. I just came over like that. I had no choice. The air fell silent. Only the children's even breathing filled the room. The clock on the wall pointed to 11 o'clock. He stood up. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the weekend. I cut him off. Mr. Lin, as agreed. You're on duty for the whole day. His figure stiffened. At 7 in the morning. Lin Shu has soccer practice. 8:30. Lin Shi's drawing class. 10:00. Lin Xing's early education class. At noon. Lin Shi only eats broccoli and carrots. Lin Xing's food needs to be cut into tiny pieces. And Lin Shu hates green peppers. Afternoon. I clearly rattled off a string of travel plans and precautions, as if I were assigning an impossible project. Lin Shu Bai listened, and his expression grew darker and darker. In the end, he rubbed his brow. Got it. His voice carried a weariness steeped in resignation. He walked to the door and stopped in his tracks. He did not look back. Jiang Jinyue, you won. The door closed softly, severing the clamor of the world outside. I leaned against the door and slowly slid down to the floor. Moonlight filtered through the window and spilled across the floor. A sheet of chill. The days that followed. Lin Shu Bai, in a manner almost awkward, forcefully squeezed his way into our lives. Every morning at 7 o'clock, that eye-catching black phantom would stop on Time Ben. The dilapidated apartment building, drawing countless sidelong glances. Lin Shu Bai, dressed in a suit and tie, frowned as he made his way through the corridor piled high with clutter. "Daddy's here." Lin Shi cheered as he rushed over. Ever since Lin Shubai bought him that enormous cotton candy at the amusement park, he had started calling him that. Lin Shubai stiffened slightly, but didn't correct him. Bending down, he awkwardly picked up Lin Shi. Lin Shu still wore a stern little face, but his eyes kept sneaking toward the new soccer ball Lin Shubai had brought. Lin Xing, meanwhile, held up his baby bottle and called out indistinctly, "Susu, uncle." Hug. Lin Shubai was holding Lin Shi with one arm and trying to pick up Lin Xing with the other, his movements stiff and awkward. I held back a laugh and picked up Lin Xing. "Come on. We're going to be late for soccer class." Children's soccer field. On the green turf, a group of 5 or 6-year-old boys were wildly chasing after the ball. Lin Shucheng was at the very front. Like a little cannonball, Lin Shubai stood at the edge of the field, among a crowd of parents in tracksuits, shouting and cheering. His custom-tailored suit and cold, austere aura made him seem like an oddity. "Lin Shu, pass the ball," a chubby kid shouted. Lin Shu turned a deaf ear, charging straight ahead with the ball in his headlong rush. "Shu, pass it to your teammate." Lin Shubai couldn't help but speak up. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried his usual commanding tone. Lin Shu came to an abrupt stop, and the ball was stolen away. He glared angrily at Lin Shubai on the sideline. Halftime. Lin Shu gulped down water, ignoring Lin Shubai. "Why didn't you pass the ball?" Lin Shubai asked. "They're terrible," Lin Shu said, neck stiff with defiance. "Football is a team sport." Lin Shubai tried to reason with him. "You have to trust your teammates." "No way." Lin Shu slammed down his water bottle. "I can score on my own." The father and son stared at each other wide-eyed. The atmosphere was deadlocked. I walked over and ruffled Lin Shu's hair. Shu, do you remember who helped you up last time you fell?" Lin Shu froze for a moment and looked at the chubby little boy beside him. The chubby boy gave him a silly grin. Lin Shu lowered his head, his toe scuffing at the grass. "It is Da Zhuang." "Yeah," I said softly. "Sometimes we need other people's help. And we can help others too, isn't I? More fun to win together." Lin Shu fell silent for a moment. The second half began. When the ball was passed to Lin Shu's feet again, he hesitated for a second. He looked up and saw Lin Shubai on the sidelines, his lips pressed tightly together. He kicked sharply. The ball traced an arc through the air, landing precisely at Da Zhuang, who was in a better position. Da Zhuang froze for a moment, then came to his senses and shot. "It's in." The children cheered and threw their arms around one another. Lin Shu was tossed into the air by his teammates. In the sunlight, he grinned so broadly that all his teeth showed. Lin Shubai stood by the field, watching his son being tossed into the air. At the corners of his cool, stern lips, it seemed that, ever so slightly, they lifted upward. Afternoon. Lin Shi's studio. The theme was my dad. On the other children's drawing papers, Dad was a hero in a police uniform, a doctor with glasses, a Superman riding an electric scooter. Lin Shi bit down on his paintbrush, staring gloomily at the blank sheet of paper. He stole a glance at Lin Shubai, who sat on a little stool, looking utterly out of place. Lin Shubai sat upright and proper, his two long legs tucked up awkwardly beneath him. His brows were faintly furrowed, clearly unaccustomed to the pungent smell of pie and tea filling the room, or to the children's noisy chatter. Lin Shi lowered her head. The brush smeared across the paper, great swaths of black, deep blue. Then, in the center of those oppressive tones, a tiny, Glowing sun was painted in dazzling gold. The teacher walked over and asked softly, "Cece, what are you drawing?" "Lin," she said in a small voice. "It's Dad." Looking at that dazzling mass of gold, the teacher felt a little puzzled. "Dad is like the sun?" "Lin," she shook her head, her voice even softer. "No. When the sun comes out, Daddy won't be so fierce anymore." Lin Shubai's body suddenly went rigid. He turned his head. His gaze fell upon the drawing paper, the only source of light in that expanse of darkness. He looked at Lin Shi. He child lowered her head, long eyelashes hanging down, fingers nervously twisting the hem of her clothes. Lin Shubai extended a hand, a broad palm, roughened with a thin layer of callus. After a slight hesitation, it came to rest on Lin Shi's soft crown of hair, gently rubbed it. Lin Shi raised her head in surprise. She fell into Lin Shubai's deep eyes. In those ever-cold eyes, it seemed as if something was slowly melting. Lin Shi grinned, revealing a smile missing one front tooth. On the way home, Lin Xing had fallen asleep in the safety seat. Lin Shu and Lin Shi quietly argued in the back seat over which Ultraman was stronger. Lin Shubai was driving. A soft piano piece played through the car's audio system. The golden glow of the setting sun streamed through the window, falling across the sharp lines of his side profile. It took away some of his usual cool severity. I held the sleeping Lin Xing in my arms, watching the cityscape flash by outside the window. Some corner of my heart seemed to loosen slightly. This eerie yet peaceful parent-child time lasted for 2 months. Until that day, Lin Xing had a fever, without warning. In the afternoon, and at the early education class, he suddenly wilted. His little face flushed red. A temperature check showed 39.2°C. I rushed into the children's hospital, clutching my feverish little son in my arms. The emergency room was packed to the brim. Crying, coughing, and anxious questions all led together. By the time Lin Shubai hurried over, I was in line waiting to be called. Lin Xing drooped listlessly against my shoulder, his little face burning hot. "What's going on?" Lin Shubai frowned deeply, reaching out to feel Lin Xing's forehead, still half lost in a daze. Lin Xing dodged away and buried his face in the crook of my neck. "I don't know." He suddenly started burning up. I patted Lin Xing's back, my heart burning with anxiety. "Go to a private hospital." "Ow." Lin Shubai took out his phone and was about to make a call. "No need." I cut him off. "They're doing a great job here." He looked at me, then at the child in my arms, burning with fever and clearly miserable, his face dark enough to drip water. "Jiang Jinyue, do you have to be so stubborn? This isn't about putting on a brave front," I said, forcing down my anger. "Public hospitals have proper procedures, and the doctors are experienced. Look at this place. How long are we supposed to wait?" He pointed at the noisy, crowded corridor. "However long it takes, we wait." I held Lin Xing tight. "He's my child. I know what's best for him." We stood locked in stalemate in the crowded emergency corridor, like two hedgehogs bristling at each other. "Family of Lin Xing." "Lin Xing," the nurse called, poking her head out. "Here." I immediately scooped up the child and rushed over. The doctor examined him, listened with a stethoscope, and checked his throat. "Viral flu, and the tonsils are a bit red. Go get a blood test first." There was already a long line at the blood test window again. Lin Xing saw the nurse in a white coat holding a needle and burst into tears in fright. "Mommy, no injection." Xing Xing is scared. He burrowed desperately into my arms, his little arms clinging tightly around my neck. Tears and snot smeared all over me. "Be good, Xing Xing. Don't be afraid." It'll be over in just a moment. Mommy's holding you. I coaxed him with aching tenderness. On the verge of tears myself, Lin Shubai stood to the side. His face livid. He looked at his son crying as if his heart and lungs were being torn apart. At the crowded and chaotic surroundings. At the gleaming needle in the new RSC's hand, his jawline tightened until it seemed ready to snap. Suddenly, he strode forward. He took Lin Xing, who was crying and struggling, from my arms. The movement was not exactly gentle. Yet it carried an irresistible force. Lin Xing, his voice wasn't loud. But it strangely cut through the child's crying. Look at me. Lin Xing was stunned by that deep voice. He sniffled and looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. Lin Shubai met his son's frightened gaze heated. You're a boy. The injection will hurt. But the pain will pass. If you're sick, you have to get treat. Ed. Crying won't solve the problem. His tone was imperative, carrying the same habitual firmness. Lin Xing stared at him in a daze and forgot to cry. The nurse seized Lin Xing's little arm at once. The needle went in. Lin Xing's little mouth puckered. And he was about to cry again. No. Crying. Lin Shubai's voice was not loud. Yet it carried an invisible pressure. Lin Xing pouted, tears welling in his eyes. But he forced himself not to let them fall. After the blood draw, Lin Shubai held Lin Xing in his arms, gently patting his back. The movement was a little stiff. Yet it carried a clumsy sort of comfort. All right. Lin Xing buried his little face in his broad shoulder and sobbed softly. Lin Shubai held him and walked to the vending machine at the end of the corridor. Insert a coin. With a clang, a bottle of strawberry milk rolled out. He handed it to Lin Xing. In his arms, Lin Xing held the icy cold milk bottle in his arms and finally stopped sobbing. I stood a few steps away, watching that man, who was always so high and mighty, holding my youngest son, comfort him in his own clumsy way, protect him with his hard, unyielding shell. The Tao ring wall of ice in his heart crashed down. A corner of it. The test results came back. And sure enough, it was a viral cold. The doctor prescribed medicine and told us to go home and keep an eye on him. Lin Shubai drove us home. After taking the medicine, Lin Xing fell asleep in my arms. Lin Shu and Lin Shu were also so tired they dozed off in the back seat. The car was very quiet. Only the faint whisper of the air conditioner could be heard. Red light. Lin Shubai stopped the car. His gaze fell on the rearview mirror. In the mirror, I could be seen holding Lin Xing in my arms, and on the back seat, two fluffy little heads. He suddenly spoke. His voice was low and, in the silence of the carriage, especially clear. Jiang Jinyue, all these years, thank you for your hard work. I held Lin Xing's hand a little tighter. I said nothing. I simply lowered my head and gently brushed my lips against my younger son's burning forehead. Tiring, isn't it? Their dim yellow glow illuminated the peeling, mottled walls. Reached the doorway. I took out my key and unlocked the door. Lin Shubai stood behind me, holding Lin Xing in his arms. The corridor was narrow. His breath was very close, carrying the crisp scent of pine. The key slid into the keyhole, turned. Click. The door opened. I was just about to go in, Behind me, Lin Shubai's low voice rang out. Jiang Jinyue. I came to a halt. I did not turn back. 3 months is almost up. His voice betrayed no emotion. The children are adapting well. The Lin family. LY can give them the best. Come back with me. The sound-activated light in the stairwell went out. Darkness swallowed everything in an instant. Only the faint moonlight filtered in from outside the window, outlining his tall silhouette. And my rigid back. Lin Xing in my arms stirred uneasily. Lin Shubai patted him gently. In the darkness, his voice was clear and calm. You too, Mrs. Lin's place is yours. I'll make it up to you for the past 5 years. The air froze, like a heavy block of ice. It was so oppressive it made it hard to breathe. I slowly turned arrow. UND. In the darkness. I looked at his blurred outline. Lin Shubai. My voice was eerily calm. What do you call this? A handout? Or? After dutifully investigating the children, taking me along as part of the package. He was silent for a few seconds. Think whatever you like. This is the best arrangement. It's for the children. To you, it can't be called mistreatment either. In the darkness, I smiled. Silently. Lin Shubai. 5 years ago. You left behind a check. 5 years later. You eat out a larger one. Buy the child. And pack their mother in with them. In your eyes. Is everything something that can be given a price tag? His breathing grew heavier in the darkness. Jiang Jinyue. Don't be so ungrateful. What the Lin family can give you is something you'd never be able to. I don't want it. 3 words. Decisive and resolute. Interrupted the words he had not yet spoken. The voice-activated light suddenly came on because of my voice. Under the glaring white light, I could clearly see the raging anger surging in his eyes. And there was also a trace of offended astonishment. Lin Shubai. I looked at him. Word by word. Your money. Your Lin family. Your compensation. I want none of it. The 3 months are up. You've met my conditions. Whether the children are willing to go with you. Ask them yourself. As for me, I took a deep breath. The 4 of us mother and sons live and die together. Wealth and honor have nothing to do with us. Mr. Lin, please go back. I reached out, intending to take Lin Xing back from his arms. He suddenly stepped back. His arms tightened, like guarding a treasure lost and found again. His gaze was sharp as a blade. Jiang Jinyue. Do you have to be this stubborn? For the sake of that pitiful bit of your self-esteem. Let the children suffer with you. Self-esteem. I laughed. But tears suddenly rolled down my face. Lin Shubai. These 5 years. When I was holding my feverish child in the rain and couldn't even get a cab. Could pride turn into a car? When I was working 3 jobs a day until I collapsed from exhaustion. Could pride be exchanged for money? When my child asked me where his father was. Could pride give him a father? I haven't had that thing for a long time. I only want my children. As long as they can grow up safe and sound. That's enough. Tears surged forth. My vision blurred. But I fixed my eyes on him. Unwavering. Give me back my child. I stepped forward. Lin Shubai stood still. Holding Lin Xing in his arms. Like a silent mountain. He looked at me. Looking at my tears. Looking at my hysteria. The fury surging in his eyes gradually settled down. It turned into something deeper. Something more complicated. It was Li. Ku. Confusion. And also like. Something hard was being silently shattered. Lin Xing in her arms was awakened by the noise. And began to cry groggily. Mommy. Want mommy. Lin Shubai's arm finally loosened its grip. I swept up the crying Lin Xing in one motion. Held tightly in my arms. As though air holding the entire world. Lost and found again. Lin Shu and Lin Shu were startled awake, rubbing their eyes. They looked at us in a dazed, frightened way as we faced off against each other. Mom Lin Shu timidly tugged at the hem of my clothes. Lin Shu, meanwhile, was like a little leopard ro, used to fury, standing in front of me and glaring at Lin Shu Bai. Don't bully my mom. Lin Shu Bai looked at everything before him, looked at me, holding the child tightly in my arms, looked at Lin Shu, shielding me from the front, looked at Lin Shi, tugging at the hem of my clothes, his eyes full of unease, looking at Lin Xing, who was sobbing in my arms, his tall figure in the narrow stairwell looked somewhat lonely. He said nothing, only gave me a deep, searching look. That gaze was too complex to decipher. Then, he turned around, step by step, walked down the stairs. Heavy footsteps echoed through the silent stairwell, fade in, farther and farther away, until they disappeared. The voice-activated light went out again. Darkness once more enveloped everything. I held the 3 children in my arms, leaning against the cold wall. Every muscle went weak. The next day, Lin Shu Bai did not appear. The 3rd day, neither did he. That black car never stopped downstairs again. Life seemed to have returned to its starting point. Go to work, pick up and drop off the child, cook, and coax them to sleep. It was just that. In her heart, it felt as if a piece had gone hollow, and yet, it was also as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her chest. The weekend, taking the children to the park, Lin Shu and Lin Shi chased each other across the grass. Lin Xing squatted off to the side watching the ants move house. The sunlight was beautiful. I sat on the bench, watching them. The phone 6. Brat. An unfamiliar message. Cloud top. 66th floor. Now. Alone. No signature. But I knew who it was. My heart sank at once. What was destined to come would always come. I entrusted the children to the auntie at the park management office, who was familiar to them. I took a tax. To Hentang, the 66th floor. Still cold and empty. Lin Shu Bai stood before the enormous floor-to-ceiling window. His silhouette was upright and straight, yet it carried a trace of indescribable solitude. At the sound of footsteps, he turned around. In his hand was a craft paper dokum, end envelope, exactly the same as the last paternity test one. My heart clenched instantly. What was he up to this time? He walked over to the desk and set the file envelope down. Sit. There was no emotion in the voice. I remained standing. Mr. Lin, if you have something to say, say it. He lifted his eyes to me. His gaze was deep, like a cold pool with no bottom. 3 months are up. I ask. Ed the children. He paused, his gaze falling on the document envelope. Lin Shu said, wherever mom goes, I go. Lin Shi said, he wants to play with uncle, but he wants to stay with mom even more. Lin Xing clung to my neck and cried, saying he wanted his mother. He raised his eyes, his gaze settling heavily on my face. Jiang Jin Yue, you won. The children chose you. My taut nerves suddenly relaxed. My palms were drenched in sweat. So. He picked up the document envelope and handed it to me. This. Sign it. Again, documents. I looked at him warily and didn't take them. Relax. He tugged at the corner of his mouth, though there was no real smile in it. Not a check. And not property deeds. After a moment's hesitation, I took them. Take out the file. The title came into view. Equity nominee holding in child custody agreement of the Lin Group. I skimmed through it at a glance. The more he looked, the more shocked he became. There were only two core clauses. Lin Shubai voluntarily and unconditionally donated 5 of the shares in the Lin Group under his name to the 3 children, to be held in trust by me until they came of age. Lin Shubai voluntarily waived any claim to custody, retaining only visitation rights. The timing and manner of visitation must be negotiated with me, on the premise that the children's normal lives and their wishes are not affected. Attached behind it was a thick stack of legal documents for the gift of equity, 5% of the Lin family's shares. How much it was worth, I didn't dare imagine. It was enough to ensure my children would never have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of their lives. Standing at a starting point most people could never hope to reach, I held that stack of papers in my hand. My fingertips were icy cold. Lin Shubai. What is this supposed to mean? A new compensation plan? He walked over to the liquor cabinet and poured 2 glasses of water. He placed one in front of me. Then he picked up the other and took a sip. Jiang Jinyue. I looked into the past 5 years of your life. Very clean. And very. He seemed to be searching for the right word. Difficult. He set down the glass of water, his gaze drifting to the tiny city outside the window. These 3 months, I watched how you, all by yourself, raised 3 children and survived in this city. Watched Shushu fall while playing soccer and not cry even after scraping her knee. Watched CCS Ave the candy she couldn't bear to eat and give it to me. Watched Xingxing, when she had a fever, cling to your finger and refuse to let go. He turned his head and looked at me. In those eyes that were always cold, there was a strange emotion surging within, like an undercurrent flowing beneath the ice. I'm not a good father. Maybe I'll never learn to be like you, but at least. He paused, his voice dropping. I want to make it easier for them to live. I want to make your life a little easier. This isn't charity. He looked at me. Inu, enunciating each word. This is their right, as Lin Shubai's son. This is what they deserve. Sign it. The lawyer is outside waiting to notarize it. I clenched that stack of papers, light as a feather yet heavy as 1,000 pounds. Looking at the man before her, he remained upright, cold and stern, and yet something was different. That hard shell, the one that kept others at a distance. A crack had split open, revealing the softness and awkwardness. Perhaps even he himself had never noticed. A long silence passed. I picked up the pen. On the last page, I signed my name, Jiang Jinyue. The handwriting was clear and forceful. Put down the pen. I looked up at him. Lin Shubai. I agree to the visitation rights. But there's one condition. He raised an eyebrow. Go on. Every time you come, you have to bring the child yourself. No private bookie ing of the amusement park. No bodyguards or assistants allowed. I paused. Like it is at the amusement park. He froze for a moment. Then, upon that stern face, the corners of his mouth, with extreme slowness, lifted into the faintest curve, as though the frozen lake had finally lit with the first crack of spring. Good. He assented. There was a trace of almost imperceptible compromise in his voice, and perhaps a little relief. He stepped out of the Yunding building. The sunlight was blinding. I narrowed my eyes. The phone rang. It was Xinqinghe's shriek. Yeah, quick. Check the news. The financial headlines. There's been a change in Lin Group's equity. That lunatic Lin Shubai suddenly transferred 5 of the shares to a mysterious person. Was it you? Was it you? I smiled. Did not answer. Hung up the phone. Took a deep breath. The air carried the scent of freedom, and 3 little rascals were waiting for me to pick them up. I turned around and headed toward the subway station. Light, brisk steps. A week later. Saturday. The doorbell rang on time. Lin Shi cheered and ran to open the door. Dad. Lin Shubai stood outside the door, not wearing a suit. A simple gray cashmere sweater and dark trousers. It had shed a bit of the cold hardness of a business titan and gained a touch of domestic softness. Only the enormous toy box he was carrying still clearly displayed his nouveau riche flair. Daddy. Lin Shi rushed over and threw her arms around his leg. Lin Shu stood off to the side with his arms folded, looking cool and aloof. Yet his eyes kept drifting toward the toy box. Lin Xing held up his milk bottle and said in a sweet, babyish voice, Daddy, cake. Lin Shubai bent down, lifting Lin Shi into his arms with one hand. And with the other, he actually pulled a delicate strawberry cake box out from behind his back. Lin Xing's eyes lit up instantly. I came out of the kitchen wearing an apron. Where are we going today? Lin Shubai set Lin Shi down and handed me the cake. The motion was perfectly natural. The Science and Technology Museum. He said, Shushu wants to see the rocket model. Lin Shu's eyes lit up. Then he quickly forced himself to look composed. Humph. I never said that. Lin Shubai ignored Hai's little bout of stubbornness and looked at me. Want to go together? Sunlight streamed through the window and fell across him, warm and cozy. I untied my apron. Let's go, you three little rascals. He gave a faint smile. He bent down. With one arm he lifted Lin Xing, and with the other he took Lin Shi by the hand. The movements were still far from precise. Yet they were far more composed than at the beginning. Lin Shu. He looked at that awkward little figure. Let's go. Lin Shu shuffled over reluctantly. Lin Shubai held out his hand. A broad palm settled on the top of Lin Shu's fluffy head. Rubbed it. Lin Shu's body stiffened for a moment. But he didn't dodge. The tips of his ears quietly turned red. I locked the door. Looking at the tall man ahead, he held the babbling Lin Xing in one arm and led the chattering Lin Shu with the other. Beside him followed Lin Shu, who was clearly thrilled yet tried hard to act like a cool older brother. Sunlight spilled over them, cast long, warm shadows. Follow behind him, step by step. Walk down the stairs, toward the bustling, smoke and fire world of mortals.